Video number one, here we go. We're going to start off with just Greg and I, co-founders of Beyond Goals Mentoring, answering a couple questions about different things from our career that we think will be helpful, not only for youth athletes, but parents of youth athletes as well. So I'll start first. Greg, a lot of players are asked to change positions every now and then, right? They think that they are a set center midfielder, and then their coach says, "Hey, I think you're a right midfielder. Go play on the right wing," right? And so, just talk us through one, how to deal with such an ask, and two, maybe personal experience of yourself going through that.
Yeah, I think I'll use my personal experience to kind of explain everything in that sense. Obviously, growing up, I think all of us probably dream to be R9 Ronaldos or Cristiano Ronaldos and score goals and celebrate and do awesome things when scoring goals. But as you get older, there are different positions that you are able to play. My whole entire youth career from the age of 4 years old when I started to play soccer all the way up until I became a professional soccer player at the age of 16, 17. I played left wing and I played center mid. So I was a number 10 and a number 7 or 11 my whole entire youth career on the field. I never thought of myself playing anywhere else. If I were to become pro, if I were to achieve or conquer my dreams, I never figured I would play in any other position. Until the very first day that I did become pro and the very first training session that I had, they put me at left back. And I had, obviously to think about it in that certain moment. Did I particularly like it? Did I like that decision being made that day? The answer is no, right? I don't think any of us really are comfortable in moving around and telling ourselves, man, that's not my position. My position is this or that. And sometimes playing a different position can be hard for us to handle on the mental side of it. I like to explain to people that there are three things that I obviously look for, and the way that I took that opportunity and made the most of it. And I ended up playing left back for the rest of my professional career. The first thing is thinking about being flexible, right? When we are flexible, we allow ourselves to be stretched into different positions and have the mindset that we can be put into different areas. Sometimes when you are flexible, it allows you to be versatile, right? You become versatile. You become a well-adapted player in many and various different positions. That means you are able to achieve that certain goal within that particular position. And at the end of the day, those two equal the word of opportunity, in which I initially said it gave me an opportunity to play professionally for 12 to 13 years at one position. So I think with a lot of the kids that we speak with, it is helping them understand those three components. And the more you learn, the more positions that you learn at a young age, don't tell yourself, I only play one position. Allow yourself to have the opportunity to learn different positions, because you can always be that very flexible player and versatile player. And coaches love the fact that players can play different positions because it gives them an opportunity to use you much more often than usual.
Awesome. Well, thankfully you came across that coach, whoever he was, that put you at left back, because it worked out pretty well for you. Had a decent little career there at left back. So yeah, it definitely worked out. Switching gears a little bit, throughout your career, you obviously dealt with some injuries like we all do. And that's another big mental component, right? Where there's obviously a lot of things that you do once you have an injury as far as rehab and taking care of the specific injuries. But something that is equally as important is, how do you know when you're mentally ready to get back, right? And the fear of like, am I going to get re-injured? Am I ready actually to play again? What if I get injured again, right? All those, the mental hurdle of coming back from an injury is very difficult. And so talk us through a little bit of your mindset when you're coming back from an injury, and trying to get back there on the field and get back to Greg Garza level.
I think the first injury for most of us who have gone through a particular injury is always the toughest, right? The very first injury is always the hardest. And I think the questions that we ask ourselves are, am I going to be the same player again, right? Am I going to run the same? Am I going to perform at the same level as I was before? One thing that I had to continuously ask myself after coming off. And I think building the most important word that I find, not only within the soccer world, but within life itself, is the capacity of gaining resilience, right? Being resilient in everything that you go through, and the trials and tribulations that you may go through, and whatever they may be. And when you're able to recover, sometimes having patience and sometimes quicker than other times, but you gain that word within your own definition and your own vocabulary, your own dictionary of your life and your assets and your traits of the word of what resilience means. And that is the ability to always understand those moments and get out on the other side, and make yourself tougher for whatever's to come next, right? Our careers, our soccer careers, along with yours, Mike, I'm sure has always been a roller coaster, right? It's never a mountain that you're climbing. There's always going to be valleys that you come across. But I think, gaining that word resilience within your back pocket and having it within your back pocket is massive. So for me, the one thing that I definitely ask a lot of young kids who are going through injuries or who are dealing with that same mentality of, am I going to be the same player? Am I going to perform at the same level? There's one simple question that I always ask them, and something that I dealt with after that first time, right? Did you prepare yourself enough to get through it? Did you do all the right things that you needed to get through it throughout that injury? And that is being responsible, personal planning. Preparation is key when you're going through. Do you need to do 2 days of rehab? If this is what the doctor tells you, then follow those instructions. This is what the PT, the physical therapist, tells you. Follow those instructions. Do a little extra so you can help yourself at the end of the day, and continuously do those things even afterwards, right? Because those things are going to continuously prevent you from getting injured again in the future. But the main thing and the mentality aspect of it is, the two things that I always ask is, did you change your birth date after you got injured? And did you change your last name, right? And the answer to both of those is no. You're still that same exact person, that same exact player that you were before the injury, after the injury. And that's one thing that I had to learn within myself, of going through those mental blockages, or those mental blocks of trying to understand, am I going to be the same player? Am I going to run the same? Am I going to have the same skill level? And at the end of the day, you prove yourself wrong, right? And proving yourself wrong is great sometimes, because it allows you to prepare yourself for whatever might come in the future. And I think for me, it was understanding that, okay, I still am the same player. I still have the same skill set. I still run the same. I'm still quick. I'm still right. All these different things that I proved myself wrong, and understanding that allowed me to understand that whatever happens in the future, my birthday is not going to change, and my last name is still going to be the exact same.
Love it. Yeah, no, totally. Really good advice. Along those lines, I think that one of the things that I found out about you, and I didn't even know when as teammates, that you journaled, right? I only found that out once we started Beyond Goals mentoring and you started speaking about it. And now I highly encourage it. But and I wonder if that helped sometimes through injuries as well. But talk about kind of why you journal and the benefits you get from it.
For sure. I think, journaling for all of us is such an important aspect of learning and growth within ourselves, right? That internal subconscious that we have. And if I were to ask you, Mike, there's probably 1,000 different things that you think about within your day. But sometimes jotting them down and writing them down can really put that out there, right? And it help you remember, or remind you to do certain things. I remember, even as a professional player, and even as a kid, it was something that I developed and really understood, that if there was something that stuck out to me in a certain game or a certain training session, that I thought to myself, this is going to help me in the future. This is going to remind myself that, you know what, as I'm tracking back, or as I'm running back defending, I need to have my shoulders turned so I can remember who's behind me, or running on the other side of me. And those are things that I would write down in my journal to help me understand, okay, writing things down will allow me to remember, and I can check those notes before that next training, or check those notes before that next game on the way to the stadium, or whatever it may be. Another big thing is to how to build our confidence, right? How to hype ourselves up before the game, and how to deal with that nervousness, and how to deal with that adrenaline factor right before the game. And one huge thing that I tell kids is how to write down all of your strengths and all of your assets. Look at yourself in the mirror and write down who the player that you think you truly are. that gives you that ultimate confidence, because in my opinion is probably one of the most important things that we can do on before stepping on that field, is understanding how valuable we are and how much of an asset we are on that field. So writing down your strengths and understanding how much value that can have towards your confidence during the whole entire game is massive. And also going through injuries, right? Understanding the adversity that you're going through, understanding those rough moments that you're going through during that injury is huge, right? Because it takes you back into knowing that, you know what, I got through that, I can get through something else. And also creating reminders for yourself. There's so many injury prevention movements or injury prevention things that you do throughout your injury that you write down, and physical therapists write down for you, that you can continue to use. Even now I don't play anymore, I still use so many different workouts that I had from all of the different strength coaches that I had in the past, right? And those are things that I wrote down specifically because I told myself, well, I want to be fit not only when I'm playing, but for the rest of my life. And I know these guys know what they're talking about. So, those are huge things that can continue to help you, not only within that particular moment that you're going through, but also for future reference as well. And I think that is why journaling is massively important.
Yeah, I totally agree. I didn't journal at all. But looking back, I wish I did, because you're right. There's times when you go through small little injuries and you do a bunch of exercises, and then you switch teams and you're thinking, and then that injury pops up again. You're like, God, what were those exercises that I did again like 4 years ago? God, if I could remember that, right? And then you're trying to contact the person, right? It's just so much easier if you had that information available, and also like there's training sessions sometimes, or little drills that we do on the field where I'm like, God, I wish I had written down or just drawn a quick diagram of what we did, because I remember, God, there were some really good sessions, and I'm sure maybe you use some of those with the kids you coach now, or you can use them in the future if you get into higher coaching, right? Little things like that where I look back and think, yeah, I wish I had done it, but gosh, you didn't tell me about it when we were playing swimming and locker mates in Atlanta. So
For
no,
sure. No, it's I think something that I probably should have been more vocal about, and I think that's definitely one thing that I want to talk about next is understanding leadership qualities. I think having you as a teammate for a couple of years, and understanding the value of, probably in my opinion, the best leader and the best leader, and I say that as in captain, that I played with throughout my whole entire career. And I got to play with a lot of different leaders and a lot of different captains, and I just kind of want to dive into your brain a little bit and kind of ask you, how you were able to lead throughout your career, because you captained so many different teams. What was your demeanor like on the field, and what type of leader were you, and how did you gain those leadership qualities as you became an older player?
yeah. Well, thanks for the compliment. And I didn't always view myself as a leader, right? I definitely was not a leader when I was younger. I definitely just like to follow along. Didn't want the responsibility of leading. So it was definitely something that I developed as I went along. I had some very good mentors and captains that I learned a lot from throughout my career, which helped me when it was my turn to lead. So I tried to take some of the things that they did as well. But I think it all starts with respect, and gaining the respect of everyone that you're trying to lead. And there's different ways to gain that respect, right? There's some guys that if you're just a good human being and you do things well on the field and off the field, right? You just do things the right way, people are going to respect you. That's a really easy way to gain people's respect. But there's also some players who need you to show them on the field who you are as a player in order to gain their respect. And so that was always important for me. Like when we signed a new player, right? When we signed Almiron, when we signed, I don't know, any other type of bigger player that came along, I always thought, okay, you know what? This next week in training, these next 2 games, I'm going to show this guy who I am on the field, because sometimes that's a really good way to gain that respect. And it's very, very difficult to lead if you don't have the respect. So that was always my number one thing, right? Connect with people on the field and off the field to gain their respect. And when you do that, it's a lot easier to lead. I was not a big vocal leader. I led by example and I led by action, But one of the benefits of doing it that way was when I did speak, people listened because it was rare, right? It wasn't a normal occurrence, right? So when I had something to say, especially in a group setting, uh, the respect that I had for who I was, but also the fact that I wasn't always just yelling and barking at guys, they tended to listen a little bit more, and take in what I had to say. So, I think that those types of things helped me, but a lot of it is communication as well, and learning how to communicate with certain players, right? There's a different way that I could communicate with you, Greg, because we had a really good relationship versus, somebody that I'm not as close with, right? And it's not important to be super close with everyone on your team. It's not going to happen. But can there be enough mutual respect and an open line of communication that you understand how to communicate with that person? Right? How I communicate with Joseph was different than how I communicated with Brad. It was just different ways of connecting with people and understanding how people tick, so that you can motivate them and get what's best out of them for the team, because that's all we want as a group, right? Is to win games, to enjoy our livelihood, and so that was the purpose of it all, right? Is to just help the team win. And it's an ever ongoing process. Never a full leader in every aspect. Even today, I feel like I'm still learning a lot about how to lead and how to speak with and work with younger players. So still room to grow.
No, I think you said it very well. I think you were the type of person that you knew how to interact with each and every individual, right? You knew how to speak with them differently and understood their characteristics and understood how they received certain information, and you did that very well. And I think that's how you probably gained so much respect from all of the guys in that locker room, especially that championship team of having I don't know how many different languages that were spoken within the locker room, and understanding how to cope with a lot of different cultures, right? Because you're dealing with not only American guys, you're dealing with guys all over the world, and everybody has different views and morals and ways of viewing the world a little bit differently. So, I think that comes down to the type of human being, the type of person you are, Michael, and understanding that everybody was able to gain that respect from the type of person you were, and then obviously you showed. I like how you said a lot of players gain respect just by the player that they were, right? A lot of guys are so good at playing the game of soccer that people automatically have respect for them, and that's when I think those leadership qualities have to show immensely, right? Those guys are the ones that really have to be great leaders, because there's so many people that want to follow in their footsteps, and it doesn't matter if you're you're the same age as people, or if you're younger than people. If you're able to back up your game, then that creates an automatic leadership quality within your game.
No, totally. And I agree. It goes both ways, right? You can't just be the best player on the field and expect people to follow you and be the leader, right? I mean, a classic example is look at Cristiano Ronaldo right now, right? And the way he's behaving, both with Manchester United and now with Portugal, right? Even though he might be the best player, right? He's not gaining that respect and garnering that respect from his teammates. And so it's difficult to lead, and not always does the best player want to lead. Which is okay. So it's not mandatory you be the best player or even one of the best players on the team. It can be helpful for sure, but it's not a necessity.
Yeah, I think one thing I want to talk about to finish off for today is I think one major thing that I've seen within a lot of the kids that we've mentored, and a lot of people, and even for ourselves, is how to cope and deal with mistakes that are made on the field. That's probably the biggest question that you and I always get, is how do I deal with certain mistakes? How do I deal with that first mistake and don't let it spiral? And how do I deal with those mistakes that happen throughout the course of the game, especially when it affects your confidence in that very moment? What are ways that you kind of dealt with dealing and coping with mistakes as the course of the game went on, and how did you get out of those those spirals sometimes to pick yourself back up?
Yeah, man, dealing with those is tough, right? Especially as a center back, especially as a defender, right? Because that first mistake could be 1-0. That's just the life of a defender, and how you bounce back from that is important. I think that it starts with the mentality going into the game. I'd challenge anyone that says that they've ever had a perfect game. And if that is the case, then I'd say that you probably either played for a minute, or every time the ball came to you, you passed the ball backwards, right? The more freedom that you play with, the more chances that you take, the more you challenge yourself, the more likely you're going to have a mistake here or there. And so I never went into a game thinking like I'm going to be mistake free, right? I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to give the ball away, right? If the coach wants me to build out of the back, I'm likely going to make at least one mistake today where somebody reads a ball, I mishit it, something happens, I take a chance I shouldn't have, and they steal it, right? The reaction off of those mistakes is what's important, right? The reaction is what's usually going to lead to a goal or not. Most mistakes you make, you still have an opportunity to make up for that mistake before true consequences hit. So it's usually the second mistake, which is the reaction or lack thereof, that's costly. So knowing that I'm not going to play a perfect game and I'm going to make mistakes, I think helps, because when the mistakes occurred, it was like, okay, yeah, that's going to happen. But also I'm not going to make many mistakes. And if I do, I'm not going to be on the field. So because I am on the field, I'm not going to be making many mistakes. So, okay, maybe I got the mistake out of my out of the way. I'm going to be good from now on. Right. I try and implement that now when I play golf, and I'm like, I have a terrible front nine, and I'm like, well, the law of averages says I'm going to play really well in the back nine, rather than saying, oh shoot, you know what, I'm just not having it today. This is brutal. I stink. It's going to be bad. Right. And so it's just a way of focusing on it, and a way of dismissing the mistake for the time being, right? There's always time afterwards to review it, look over it, and learn from it. But the only thing that you can control in the game after you make the mistake is your reaction to it. And your reaction is important, not only in that exact second where the mistake occurs, but the rest of the game, right? Are you going to let yourself down? Are you going to let the rest of the team down because you're feeling sorry about that mistake? Because there might be time to make up for that mistake. There might be plenty of game left. And if you're an important part of the team, which if you're on the field, you have a responsibility to your teammates to play well the rest of that game. So overcoming those mistakes is vital. It's key to having success and long-term success, but it's not easy, right? Especially as a younger player, where you take on so much onus, and every mistake sometimes feels like you're letting everyone down, you're letting yourself down, your parents down, right? But understanding how to bounce back from those things, and how to learn from them, and that they're normal, right? Mistakes are normal, especially if you're challenging yourself. So that's how I tried to view it.
I like that. I think, one thing that I always view, and one thing I always use the example as, the game of soccer is a game of what? The game of soccer is a game of mistakes, right? Understanding that, whatever mistake you make, you always have an opportunity right after that to make up for it. And I love the way that you said that. And the cool thing about soccer is, and being a team sport, is that you sometimes in your mistakes you have the guys around you to make up for it as well. And the mistakes that they make as well throughout the course of the game, can you also be a guy to step up and help them get through those mistakes as well? Because if you look around, if you look to your right, your left, behind you, in front of you, the guy that you're facing or the guy that you're playing with most likely has probably made just as many or probably even more mistakes than you have. So understanding that, the game of soccer is a game of mistakes, and getting through that mentally, and finding that positivity right after that moment to say, okay, I'm gonna do whatever I can, and my reaction is going to be whatever it needs to be, and the right path, I think is essential to the rest of your game, and creating that success and that consistent success. I love it, man. Great.
Awesome. Yeah, it's crazy to try and let one mistake define your game, right? That's crazy. You've got a lot more to give to the game rather than that one mistake. No, awesome stuff. Really enjoyed the conversation today, Greg. If there's other topics anyone would like us to hit on about the mental side of the game, please ask away in the questions, comments, and we'll try and get to those next time or when we're asking some future guests. So we appreciate you guys listening. Thanks, Greg.
No, thanks for joining us, everyone. And I think the coolest thing about this is that we'll be able to dive into other players, former players, current players, dive into their minds a little bit and see what they go through, and see how they cope with certain decision making or frustrations or whatever it may be on the field, and or certain moments that really stick out to them. So I'm super excited and can't wait for the next one.